What would you say if a cop looked at you and asked, "Do you have any guns, drugs, or alcohol in the car right now?" Your answer in the next 3 seconds can change your whole night. One bad sentence can hand the officer more than you ever meant to give. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe and like this video so you can find it fast when you actually need it. If you care about your rights, do that right now, because this is the kind of thing people forget under pressure. Here's what you're about to learn. The one sentence that shuts down the pressure to confess. The one sentence that blocks casual search requests. The one question that tells you if you're stuck there or free to go. And the one line you use if the stop turns serious and the officer keeps pushing. Let me show you exactly how smart drivers protect themselves without arguing, without lying, and without making the stop worse. Most people have no idea how fast a normal stop turns into a fishing trip for admissions. One small comment like, "I only had one drink," or "That's not mine," can become the whole case. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. Drivers think they can talk their way out, then they talk their way deeper in. Here's the reality. The officer is trained for this moment. You need to be ready too. Now let's talk about what usually goes wrong for you. You get nervous, your heart starts pounding, the lights are flashing, the officer sounds calm, almost friendly. Then comes the question, "Anything in the car I should know about?" Or maybe, "Have you been drinking tonight?" Or, "Any weapons in the vehicle?" That sounds simple, but it's a trap loaded with pressure. You feel like silence will look guilty. You feel like honesty will make it easier, so you start explaining. You say too much, you guess, you joke, you try to sound harmless. That is where people lose control. Listen closely because this is critical. Your goal is not to win a debate on the side of the road. Your goal is to get through the stop without giving away rights you cannot get back. That means you stay calm, you follow lawful physical orders, you hand over your license and registration if you're driving, and you stop trying to talk your way out of trouble. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. The first thing you do is clearly invoke your right to stay silent. If the officer starts asking about guns, drugs, or alcohol, you do not fill the silence. You do not explain. You do not try to sound innocent. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent." Word for word. Memorize that line, keep your voice calm, keep your hands still, then stop talking. Why does this work for you? Because silence by itself can get twisted. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Salinas versus Texas, the court basically said that just going quiet is not always enough by itself. In plain English, if you want the protection, you need to say you are using it. That is why your words matter. Not a speech, not a debate, just a clear line. "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent." Bad way. Most drivers say, "No, nothing like that, I swear. I only had one beer." Then that one sentence becomes evidence and the officer keeps digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent." Then the officer gets no extra story to pull apart. Watch what happens when you use the bad way. The officer hears nervous talking. Then come more questions. "Where are you coming from?" "Why did you hesitate?" "Who owns the bag?" "Why does the car smell like that?" Now you are boxed in by your own words. You may even say something wrong by accident. You are tired. You are scared. You are guessing. That is how people bury themselves. Now watch what happens when you use the good way. The officer may not like it. The officer may repeat the question. The officer may go quiet. But you have done something very important. You stopped helping the investigation. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole rhythm of the stop. The officer cannot use your own mouth as the main tool anymore. And no, this does not mean you act rude. You still follow commands like stepping out if ordered. If you are driving, you still give your license, registration, and proof of insurance when asked. If your state requires you to tell the officer about a licensed firearm, you follow that law. But outside of basic required information, you do not volunteer answers to guilt questions. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it is simple, clean, and hard to twist later. Quick note for you. Do not lie. Ever. Lying to police can create a brand new problem. Your safest move is not a clever story. Your safest move is a clear refusal to answer. That is why this tactic comes first. You are not trying to look smooth. You are trying to stay protected. Have you ever felt pressured to answer a cop fast just to make the moment end? Drop a comment below because once you see this pattern, you'll never unsee it. The second thing you do is refuse consent to any search. This is the line that too many drivers skip because the officer makes it sound casual. "You mind if I take a quick look?" You got nothing to hide, right? It'll only take a second. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. If you say yes, you may have just waived one of your strongest protections. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Keep it short, keep it calm, then say nothing else. Why is this so powerful for you? Because a consent search is exactly what it sounds like. You gave permission. And once you give permission, the fight gets much harder later. In Schneckloth versus Bustamonte, the Supreme Court said consent can make a search lawful even without a warrant. In plain English, if you say yes, you helped open the door yourself. And here's the wild part. Police do not have to tell you that you can say no. That is why your refusal matters so much. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." Then the search starts and your rights get weaker. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to rely on some other legal reason, not your permission. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. That does not mean the officer will stop. The officer might search anyway. If that happens, do not resist. Do not argue with your hands. Do not block the search. Just keep your voice calm and repeat, "I do not consent to any searches." That protects your position later if the search gets challenged in court. Here's the reality. A lot of drivers think saying no will make them look guilty, but saying yes is often much worse for you. You are not there to win a personality contest. You are there to avoid handing over rights for free. If the officer has a legal reason to search, your consent was never needed. If the officer does not have a legal reason, your yes may be what saves the search for them. And this matters even more in car stops. Cars get treated differently than homes. If an officer sees something in plain view or has real facts pointing to a crime, the search rules can shift fast. That is exactly why you never volunteer consent. Your job is to keep the record clear. You did not agree. You did not invite it. You did not make it easier. If the officer says, "Why not?" you do not explain. You do not get sarcastic. You just repeat the line. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That is enough. Short beats clever every time. Let me show you exactly why. The more you explain, the more openings you create. The shorter you stay, the less there is to use later. The third thing you do is find out whether the stop is still active or whether you are free to go. A lot of people sit there way too long because they never ask the one question that matters. You look at the officer and say this, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. Memorize that line too. Why does this help you? Because traffic stops are supposed to be about the traffic stop, not a random endless interview. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said police cannot stretch a completed traffic stop longer just to go chasing unrelated things without proper reason. In plain English, once the mission of the stop is done, the officer cannot just keep you there forever hoping something turns up. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I guess I'll just wait here," or "Do whatever you need to do." Then the stop drags on and more questioning begins. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to make the status clear. This is 100% legal. You are not resisting. You are not being disrespectful. You are asking a clean question about your status. If the officer says you are free to go, you go. Calmly. No speeches, no last comments, no, "See, I told you." Just leave. If the officer says you are detained, now you know the encounter is not voluntary, and you stop acting like friendly chatting will save you. Watch what happens when drivers never ask. The stop gets soft and blurry. The ticket is done, but the questions keep coming. "Mind if I ask you something? Where are you headed next? Why are you so nervous?" Drivers think the stop is still mandatory, so they keep cooperating. Then 10 extra minutes go by, then 15, then a dog gets called, then things get messy. Now watch what happens when you ask the right question. The officer either ends it or owns the detention out loud. That matters. The ACLU tells people to ask if they are free to leave if they are not under arrest. That is not internet myth. That is solid self-protection. It forces clarity. One important point for you. If the officer orders you to stay, you stay. If the officer orders you out of the car, you get out. Pennsylvania versus Mimms says an officer can order a driver out during a traffic stop. So do not confuse verbal protection with physical resistance. Your words protect you, your hands stay compliant. If you've made it this far, you're serious about protecting your rights. Show me by hitting that like button, because the next part is the one people forget when the pressure really spikes. The fourth thing you do is ask for a lawyer if the stop turns into a real criminal interrogation. This is the move for when things shift hard. Maybe you get arrested, maybe you get taken to a station, maybe the questions keep coming after the stop is clearly no longer just about a taillight or a lane change. Here's exactly what you say. "I want a lawyer and I will not answer questions without one." Word for word. Then stop talking. Why is this so important for you? because once you ask for a lawyer clearly, the rules change a lot. Miranda versus Arizona says police have to tell people in custody about the right to stay silent and the right to an attorney before custodial questioning. In plain English, if you are in custody and they want to question you, that warning matters. And if you clearly ask for a lawyer, that creates another layer of protection for you. Bad way. Most drivers say, maybe I should get a lawyer, or do you think I need one? Then the questions keep going and the damage keeps building. Good way. Smart drivers say, I want a lawyer and I will not answer questions without one. Then the path gets much safer. Notice how direct that is. Not maybe, not later, not should I. You are making a choice. And once you make that choice, stick to it. Do not start chatting again because the officer sounds friendly. Do not try to clear things up. People destroy good cases because they invoke their rights and then start talking again 5 minutes later. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court for a reason. It is simple. It is clear. It is hard to misread. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. Silence is not rude. Refusing consent is not rude. Asking if you are free to leave is not rude. Asking for a lawyer is not rude. These are basic protections you already have. Now let's tie the law together in plain English so you really own this. Salinas versus Texas tells you that if you want silence to protect you, you should say so clearly. Do not just stare at the dashboard and hope that counts. Say the words. Schneckloth versus Bustamonte tells you that if you consent to a search, that consent can make the search legal even without a warrant, and police do not have to remind you that you can refuse. That is why your refusal needs to be verbal and clear. Rodriguez versus United States tells you a traffic stop cannot be stretched longer than needed just to go fishing for more evidence without proper reason. That is why your question matters. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? And Miranda versus Arizona tells you that if you are in custody and being questioned, your right to remain silent and your right to a lawyer matter in a big way. Here's the reality. None of these cases help you much if you panic and start volunteering facts. The law helps the person who keeps calm and uses it clearly. Now let me show you exactly how this sounds in a real stop. You are driving home at night. Lights flash behind you. You pull over safely. You turn off the car. Your hands stay visible. The officer comes up and asks for your license, registration, and insurance. You hand them over. So far, so good. Then the officer asks, have you had anything to drink tonight? Wrong way, you say. Just one with dinner, but I'm fine. Then the officer asks, any drugs or weapons in the car? You say, no, not mine. I mean, there's nothing illegal. Now you sound nervous. Then the officer says, mind if I take a quick look? You say, sure, I guess. That is how ordinary people talk themselves into a much worse night. Right way, same stop. The officer asks, have you had anything to drink tonight? You say, officer, I'm choosing to remain silent. The officer asks, any guns, drugs, or alcohol in the car? You repeat, officer, I'm choosing to remain silent. Then the officer asks, mind if I search the vehicle? You say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Calm voice. No attitude. If the ticket or warning gets finished and the officer keeps you there anyway, you ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? If the officer says you are free to go, you leave quietly. If the officer says you are detained and the questions keep coming or you get arrested, you say, I want a lawyer and I will not answer questions without one. See the difference for you? In the wrong version, your mouth becomes the evidence. In the right version, your mouth becomes the shield. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. You are not trying to outsmart the officer. You are refusing to help build the case for them. Next week, I'm covering what to do when police ask to search your phone. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that mistake wrecks people's lives every single day. So here's your recap. First, if questions start about guns, drugs, or alcohol, say, officer, I'm choosing to remain silent. Second, if they ask to search, say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Third, if the stop seems over but they keep pushing, ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Fourth, if the stop turns into a real criminal case, say, I want a lawyer and I will not answer questions without one. Keep your hands calm. Follow physical commands. Do not lie. Do not argue. Use short lines and stop talking. Hit subscribe so you catch that phone search video next week. Smash like if this helped you lock these lines into memory before you ever need them. And drop a comment telling me which exact sentence you're going to remember first. Stay safe out there.